and welcome to the 38th episode of Course Place. I'm so glad you've chosen to join me for today's conversation. In today's episode, I will be sharing with you all a behind-the-scenes look at how I make my podcast. As always, if you like what you hear, please leave a review and/or comments, follow my podcast, and tell your friends. Also, please follow the podcast page I've made on Facebook. If you'd like to contact me via email instead of a Facebook message, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org. If you are new here, welcome. I'm your host, Cora, and I'm so excited to have you on this journey with me. Today, I want to share with you my typical process of creating this podcast. Before I get into that, though, I want to mention to you all a few quick things. The first is that I decided to cut the Truth Talk segment out of this episode because this episode is slightly different from my usual topics. Instead of talking about a faith topic or something else similar to that, I decided it might be fun for this episode to share how I make the episodes. The second is that for those who listen on YouTube, you may have noticed there were copies of the episodes I had already published. I'm sorry if that was confusing to you. I ended up discovering a way to get my podcast on YouTube easier, and even with the music that the other platforms like Spotify, Apple, Amazon, etc. have. I know that at least a couple of episodes when I first started the podcast were also missing some words on YouTube, but I think all of the ones now with music are normal and aren't missing any words. I'm not 100% sure on that though, so if you listen to one with the music and it seems like I'm missing a word or a phrase, please let me know. I will check it out for you and get back to you once I figure it out. The third thing is that I may list some things in my process slightly out of order. That is only because I will sometimes mix things up slightly and it's not necessarily the same way every single time. The final thing is that I'm going to take the whole summer off of the podcast because I will be working at camp again like last year, 2023 for those who listen past 2024. This will be the last episode until probably sometime in August or maybe September. I don't know what date the podcast will return, but I will make an announcement when I am able to start it back up again, so keep an eye out for that. Now that we have all of those things out of the way, let's dive into the episode. I generally start the episode creation process by writing my script. I script episodes out word for word for the most part. Sometimes I go a little off script, but only when I feel confident enough to do so. When I do that, I can usually only do a sentence or maybe two before I get lost and don't know what to say. Sticking to a script is generally easier for me, so then I don't get stuck. I think people that can do podcasts with an outline or just with whatever comes to their mind in the moment instead of a word-for-word script are great. That is a great gift to have. Eventually, I may try to work towards that myself, but for right now, I find it easier to do word for word usually, since I am still slightly newer to the whole creating your own podcast thing. I am also still just trying to get better and faster at the process. I generally prefer to type the scripts, because then I have both my scripts and my recording and editing software on my computer ready for when I'm able to record or edit. Plus, I can type a lot faster than I can write by hand. Sometimes it takes me a little bit to figure out what I want to talk about in an episode though, so I don't always have a topic right away. A lot of my episodes so far have come randomly, and a couple of them are from suggestions other people have made. I actually wrote this episode really fast once I have the topic figured out. I chose to explain my process since I hadn't done that yet, and I thought that maybe at least some of you would find it interesting to hear about. The next thing I do is record the episodes. Sometimes, depending on whether or not I have enough ready, I will record maybe 2 to 3 episodes in one day. That doesn't happen super often, but it has in the past. I don't usually edit them in the same day though. The catch with recording, however, is that I have to wait till the house is quiet, so that is usually when at least one of my parents and most of my siblings are gone somewhere, early in the morning before anyone gets up, or at night after everyone goes to bed. Before I record, I have to set up the microphone, get it all plugged into my computer, test it, and then I can record. You may be wondering what I do if I make a mistake while recording, meaning messing up a word or a phrase. Well, I will usually clap once, and then start over on that particular part. I do that because the clap is loud enough to make a spike in the recording, and it is easier to edit parts like that when I can see where I need to edit. Sometimes, edits I make aren't as obvious to me until I go through and listen to the recording though. Sometimes I will catch little mouth noises, like unintentional clicking or breath sounds, etc., or sometimes I will catch other background noise. I will also use a click/crackle removal feature in my audio editor, and sometimes that helps too. I think my favorite part of making a podcast episode is probably either the writing or the recording though. I don't love doing the editing, but I still do it anyway. I think editing has gotten a little easier with practice and time though. I kind of think part of the reason I don't enjoy it as much as I do other parts is because it feels boring and tedious to me at times. Plus, it also takes a while sometimes, so it can be time consuming occasionally. But that's okay, I eventually make it through. When I finish editing the file, I will listen through the whole thing one last time to make sure I have good spacing in between things, and also to make sure I didn't miss editing anything out. If I feel like I need to, I will add more space in between things, or I will try to make my edits better. My podcast episodes are not a perfect edit, but that's okay. It will probably get better with more practice and time. I used to use another program to make my podcast YouTube friendly since it's just audio only, but now that I have found the other way to publish to YouTube, I may just keep doing it that way since it is faster and easier. When I used the other program to do it, I would take the audio for whatever episode I needed to schedule to be published, put that on one track, and then add a video track so I could have a still picture to make it into a video. I use the picture that is also the profile picture on other platforms as well, and I also use it for a thumbnail on the video. I don't know if I will keep doing it the new way, but it seems easier so far. Hopefully I can continue just doing it that way to save time, but we will see how it goes. Once I have the audio and video properly trimmed together, I export the video, and then I have to wait for a little bit while it processes. During that time where I wait, I work on episode details in a separate text file, or sometimes I may just do that in Spotify for podcasters. The next thing I usually do is work on episode details in Spotify for podcasters and schedule the episode there. Usually with that, I just copy and paste the episode number, episode title, and the episode description from my separate text file if that's how I did it in the particular episode. That usually doesn't take very long though, because I usually already have my episode title and episode number written out from when I type out my script. The episode description is what seems to take me a little longer, but I feel like how I do it most often is I will take part of the episode script where I say the episode topic and use a variation of that. I do change it slightly for the episode description, but not much. I also make sure to add the music as well. Once the video is in the correct format, I export it and then I can work on details for YouTube. I don't really understand why, but for some reason, I have to wait until I upload the video file to YouTube before I can add episode details there though. After it's done processing in my other video editing program, it probably only takes a few seconds to be ready for YouTube. With some things, I will tell it to reuse certain details, but since my title and description are different for each episode, I mark those things as to not reuse them, so then I just manually add those myself. I also tell it what time and date to make them public, Tuesdays at 5 a.m. Central. YouTube goes through its own separate checks, but I don't really have to wait for those to be done in order to schedule, except for maybe one of the checks, but that doesn't usually take long. After all of that is done, I will often go back and double check to make sure they are scheduled correctly on both YouTube and Spotify for podcasters so that I don't accidentally miss one. I did have something weird with scheduling at one point on YouTube for some reason, but I'm not sure what had caused it then. I was never able to figure it out. I was somehow able to add my podcast's RSS feed, which in my understanding from looking it up, is basically at least kind of similar to a social media newsfeed to YouTube recently, as of the recording of this episode I mean, so that is why there are doubles of old ones, and why the new copies have music. I might just stick with that so that I don't have to worry about the extra step of having to use my video editing software. We'll see though. Not having to use the video editor saves some time in the process, which is ideally a helpful thing, but we will see how it goes over the next few episodes. I hope you enjoyed the behind-the-scenes look into how I make my podcast. If you think I should make similar episodes to this, and if you have any suggestions, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please follow, leave a comment and a review of my podcast if you haven't already, and please follow my podcast page on Facebook so you never miss an update. If you have any verses you'd like me to read on a future episode, or if you have any topics you'd like me to talk about, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org, send me a message on my podcast page on Facebook, or a voice message through the link in the show notes, and I'll get back to you when I can. Hope you tune in next time for the 39th episode.